Real quick background before we get into the video. My wife and I both work off the farm to keep this farm running and actually to support the habit of starting this farm. And 7 years ago, we started it. 5 years ago is when we started haying. And the reason behind it was because we bought more land, and we decided that since we bought more land, it'd be better if we made our own hay. We can sell what's extra to help offset the cost of the land and also the fuel. And not only that, but it makes it to where we're not at the mercy of someone else when we want to grow our flock bigger and bigger, especially in drought years. One more quick note before we move on. The Excel spreadsheet that you're going to see me using as a reference for all this information, that is available to you. All you have to do is email me at travis@freedomfarmsmo.com. I'll put it across the bottom of the screen. Or the other thing you can do is you can go on Facebook. You can search Freedom Farms, Roby, Missouri, and you can message us on the messenger there. But this Allis Challmers 7000 is a 106 PTO horsepower tractor, and it was made in 1976. So yes, you heard that right. This tractor is 48 years old when this video was made, and it does a really good job for us mowing. This tractor actually wears two hats though. It doesn't just mow for our farm, it also rakes. When we started this whole operation, we had one tractor that did everything. So having two tractors to share between mowing, raking, and baling is phenomenal and a really big step in the right direction in our minds. Does it cost more that way? It does. Does it also give you a cushion because if a tractor goes down? It does. So you gotta weigh your benefits versus your costs to see what's gonna work well for you. Obviously, it's not mowing by itself. There's an implement hook to it, so let's go check it out too. This is our Massey Ferguson 1372 mower conditioner. It is a center pivot machine, works out well. You can cut on either side of the tractor, but really the big key takeaway here is you're gonna see in this video, all of our tractors are actually quite large. And the problem we had with our old mower is we couldn't use the full cutting width. It was a 9'6" cutting width mower, but we couldn't use it because we couldn't kick it out far enough away from the tractor. It was just set up different as far as the swing mechanism, and it just wasn't adjustable. Now the downside of this mower is sometimes it doesn't fit through a gate well. Depending on where we're cutting at, if it's land that we own, obviously we have more than a 12-foot gate because we know that this is going to come through it. However, when we go to check other people's places that are interested in having us do their hay, that's the first thing we ask them is, hey, do you have at least a 14-foot gate? It makes it really simple for us to fit through. We can fit through a 12-foot gate and wiggle through, but boy, is it a pain. Now that you've been introduced to the equipment, let's break down some numbers. Fair market value for this tractor is around $12,000, and the fair market value for the mower, we're going to list it as $12,000 since that is what we paid for it. I want you to understand that the purchase price is not going to be simply that number divided by, say, 5 years. It's not how it's going to work. So you're going to see that the annual cost for this equipment is more than that. And that's because we based it off of somebody going out, spending $12,000, borrowing it from a bank for this and also for all the other equipment you're going to see listed in this video. I don't recommend doing it that way. I really recommend buying older used equipment that if you're mechanically inclined can repair and use for a while and then turn around and sell it to upgrade. That is what we did, but I understand that that's not always the way that everyone wants to do it or is capable of doing it. That's why we put it in as you're buying it. So I bought this tractor at $12,000. I've got a 5-year loan on it, and it's carried out with a 6% interest rate. That is what we put on this Excel spreadsheet to make it to where it's simple for everyone to see what the actual cost is going to be when they go out and they buy something. Now, if you have cash, obviously it's going to be substantially less. Plus, if let's say you buy something and you can turn around and sell it and get your money back, it's an asset, not a liability. But every piece of equipment, it's kind of both. It's an asset, but it's a liability. It's an asset until, let's say, the engine blows. Now it's a liability because I've put money into it, and it's still going to only be worth a certain amount. Now that you have all that mumbo jumbo out of your way, let's jump into this Excel spreadsheet and get this calculation going. So before we get into anything with any of the costs on this sheet, I want you to go to the top left of this page, and you're going to see that it says acres hayed annually. It's got 174 acres in there. Now you're going to see on the left-hand side, there's an equipment tab, and you're going to see the Allis Challmers 7000 and the Hesston 1372. You're going to see the purchase price of them. You're going to see the annual cost. Obviously, the annual cost is not the purchase price divided by 60 and over 5 years. It's actually the purchase price in an amortization table with a 6% interest rate paid back over 5 years. That's where I'm getting that $27.80, 58 cents. Each of them are the same because they're the same price and they're going to be the same interest rate and all that good stuff. Now, keep in mind also that if you buy older equipment like we have, right, this Allis Challmers 7000 is a 48-year-old tractor. Will a bank loan you money on it? Probably, especially depending on your credit. Will they be assuming a lot more of a risk? Absolutely. And you're going to pay for it by a higher interest rate. So keep that in mind as well when you're buying equipment, if you're not going to be able to pay cash for it. So basically it's taking that 2780.58 and it's going to divide it by 178 acres. And that's where we're getting the $15.98 from. Move on, keep going, and you're going to see maintenance cost per acre. Now I have a flat rate fee for that. And it's $5 per piece of equipment per acre it's covering. So to make this a little bit simpler, right, I'm covering 174 acres, and I get $10 for mowing, I get $10 for raking, and I get $10 for baling per acre. So it's $30 total. So if you take 174, you multiply it by 30, that gives you $5,220. That is going to give me my annual budget for maintenance cost for the year. This is where it gets tricky. If I could stay under that, that's good, because I can put that money back for next year when something bigger goes wrong. If it is bigger than that though, and let's say I don't have a cushion from last year to absorb it, now I'm going to be in the negative, because let's say that I had an engine blow. That's going to cost way more than the $5,200 by the time I pay for all my other maintenance costs, oil changes and all that other good stuff that's going to happen regardless of an oil blowing or an engine blowing. This is where it gets tricky. And that's why I'm saying that, because your maintenance costs may need to be different because of your area, your environment, your equipment in general. So if you had brand new equipment, yeah, your maintenance cost could probably be quite a bit less because most stuff's going to be covered under warranty. But it also would give you a chance to build that cushion for when your stuff gets out of warranty, or to put that money towards the next piece of equipment you buy when you upgrade. All kinds of options. You'll figure that out though. Moving on though, and for fuel. Now, fuel is really easy to calculate, and I'm going to show you a quick trick. We're going to go on the site called tractordata.com. So if I go on to Google and I just search tractor data, Allis Challmers 7000, should be the first thing that pops up. We'll click it. Once it opens, you're going to see several tabs at the top, overview, engine, transmission, dimensions, all this other stuff. You're going to see one that says test. Click test, and you're going to see Nebraska tractor test 1146 pop up for this Allis Challmers 7000. It's a graph. And on the left-hand side, going up and down, you have all the way from 0 gallons per hour all the way up to 10. And then on the bottom side, going from the left to the right, you're going to see 0 horsepower all the way up to 100, a little over 100. Like I said, this is a 106 PTO horsepower tractor. If you didn't know what your tractor is going to use for fuel, this is how you could get an estimate. That estimate is very simple. So let's say that you have a mower conditioner that recommends 80 horsepower. So we'll slide over to the 80 horsepower mark on that horsepower part of the graph, and then we're going to go up to where this blue line intersects. Where that blue line intersects is, I'm going to guess, probably 5.7 gallons an hour. That's important. So keep on to this 5.7 gallons an hour mark. Now we need to go to one more site, and this other site is going to be landscape calculator. What you're going to do is you're going to type in like MOCO calculator, search it. It should be the first one that pops up. It is for me because I've used it so many times. You go there. The first thing it's going to ask is the width of your mower, and it gives you the option to put it in inches or feet. I'm going to put mine in feet because it's 12 foot, or I could put 144 inches. Either one is going to give me the same answer. So I'll put that in there. Now I'm going to go down the next spot, and it's going to say speed. So generally, I would say my average speed is right around 5 miles an hour by the time you think about me slowing down to turn around on the ends and then start going again. So that's what we're going to go with. Now, when we do that, that's going to give us how many acres we cover per hour. And also, if you look right under the calculate button, when you click it, it says 10% overlap is calculated. So that's already inputted in there. That's going to give us 6.55 acres per hour. I've used this tractor multiple seasons already. So I already know what my cost is for fuel, because every time we go and cut a field, which we did all first cut, I'd fill up the tractor with fuel, top it all the way off, go mow that field, come back, top it off again, see how many gallons I used, and then I'd also see how many acres I covered. I'd also even calculate out further and see how many hours that took me to do that field. This is going to give you an average across the board, right? Because one field, let's say, that produces 1 bale an acre versus a field that produces 5 bales an acre is going to be a lot different fuel consumption, because the tractor's working harder to cut a thicker crop than it is to cut a thin crop. common sense. I think you guys could figure that out, but we're mentioning this because it's something else to think about. That is why we average every field. And then across the board at the end of the first cut, I take those numbers, I crunch them, and what it came out to be for us, 6.5 gallons an hour is what ours averaged out to. And we're going to divide that by the 6.5 acres an hour that we cover. So basically we use 1 gallon an acre. Now on this Excel spreadsheet, you're going to see that fuel is already inputted in there, and I've got it at $3.14 because that's what a gallon of fuel cost at the beginning of the season when we were mowing, and so we left it in there. Now in South Central Missouri, the fuel actually has went down a little bit, but that's where we're at then, so we just left it alone. When you move to the right more, you're going to see that it has the totals for what those pieces of equipment cost me. So the tractor itself mowing cost me $24.12. The mower mowing cost me $20.98. There's a difference because the simple fact that everything's the same except for the fuel. The tractor uses fuel. Needless to say, the mower itself is not using fuel. The tractor is. When you add all that together, though, you get $45.10 to mow 1 acre of ground. Seems like a lot. And I agree. Again, we're going to talk more about this towards the end. Can you tell what's behind me? Yeah, good guess. It's the rake. So the next step in the process is to rake. Now, in our case, we use a Hesston 3982 12-wheel rake, and this brings 2 of our 12-foot swaths from the mower together. This is the cheapest part of the whole process, not only because rakes don't cost much, but because they don't use a lot of fuel and they cover twice as much ground as your mower does. So not only are you using less fuel, covering more ground, that's going to really trickle down to making you a big fuel savings compared to mowing or even baling, really. Now, when you look at this spreadsheet, it looks a little bit different because you have the tractor listed, but there's the purchase price for the tractor, but there's no other information for it. And that's just simple because it's already been accounted for in the mowing portion. So we're not going to double it because we didn't pay twice as much for the tractor because it's doing 2 jobs. If anything, we could split it in half and put $6,000 purchase price in the mowing portion and $6,000 in the raking portion. The rake, we did the same thing we did for the mower and the tractor, though. We put it as a $2,500 loan in this case, and that's getting paid back over a 5-year time span at a 6% interest rate, which is going to give us $579.24 annual cost. When you spread that over the 174 acres, it ends up being $3.33 per acre. Both pieces of equipment, the tractor and the rake, are both going to get $5 an acre, so it's going to cost us $10 an acre for maintenance to rake. For our fuel costs, it's pretty simple. We're going to do the exact same process we did for mowing, but with a little twist. I don't know how much it really takes as far as horsepower goes to rake anywhere for hay. If it was me and I was making a guesstimate, I would say that you'd probably use somewhere around that 25 horsepower mark, maybe 30. Worst case scenario, go higher because you're going to estimate higher than what you really need and you're not going to undercut yourself. So if you wanted to go back to that chart and you do that for your tractor, you can. In my case, I already know because we've raked a season with it and I've already got the averages. Let's also calculate how many acres per hour we're covering. So same thing, we're going to go to this mowing calculator on landscapecalculator.com. You'll put in your width. So in my case, 24 foot is my width because that's what we cover since we're pulling 2 swaths together that were 12 foot wide to begin with. We'll take those. We're going to do 5 miles per hour again, and that's going to give us 13.09 acres per hour covered. Now, that's how you could figure it out and then do your math the way we showed you before. In my case, I already know my numbers, and it's 0.22 gallons per acre covered. So roughly about 72 cents per acre is what I pay for fuel. When you add all that together, though, same thing. You can see that the tractor itself is costing us $5.72 an acre to run, and then the rake is costing us $8.33 if you actually owed money on it. If you didn't owe money on it, it'd cost you roughly $5 an acre just for your maintenance fees. So raking total is going to be $14.05. Like I said, this is the cheapest task that you're going to do when it comes to making hay. Now, we're ready to move on and go back to the shop to see the baler. Don't mind me just showing you the validity of the $5 an acre maintenance fee per piece of equipment. This tractor right now is in the middle of an oil change. Let me finish this up and we'll talk about the baling equipment. This is our 1984 Allis Challmers 8030. This is actually the first tractor we ever bought, first piece of equipment we ever bought actually, that didn't require anything and was field ready from the get-go. Unfortunately, it came with a hefty price tag, at least to us at the time. And 3 years ago, $22,500 seemed like a lot of money to spend on a piece of equipment to us. However, this tractor only had a little over 5,000 hours at the time, and it had a recent overhaul on the engine at around 3,500 hours, what the previous owner told us. It starts well, it runs well. Honestly, I believe him and think that it really was rebuilt. But same thing like we did with all the other stuff. If you bought a tractor like this at $22,500 at 6% across 5 years, that'd give you an annual cost of $5,057.04. Ouch. That is a little steep. But the other thing is that with the tractors that I didn't mention at the beginning, these tractors don't just make hay on this farm. This tractor, for instance, does all the spraying and it also does all the fertilizer application. Whereas the 7000 doesn't just mow hay and rake hay, it also does all of our rotary hoeing for all of our pastures. Did do some brush hogging before we updated. Now the brush hog we have, I can only use it on this tractor because the tongue is too heavy for the Allis Challmers 7000 and it flexes it a lot, so we just don't take the risk. But I say that because the tractors, you could still spread your cost out more and make it cheaper, but I'm breaking it down as if you only use this equipment simply for hay and nothing else. Now this snazzy piece of baling equipment you see behind me, this is an AGCO 5456A and it's a Hesston series as you see here. This was bought this year. This increased our cost of hay production because before we'd bought older stuff, fixed it like we'd mentioned. Well, this is the second piece of equipment we've bought that required nothing and was field ready from the get-go. It is a baler that it's 100% self-contained. It does everything through the PTO, and then the rest is done through a wire harness that connects to the bale monitor. Very simple machine. It's actually how our Hesston 560 was, and we loved it. The only reason we actually upgraded was because of this part right here. This, the hump that comes out the back, this is what allows us to do net wrap. Net wrap is a substantial price difference to twine. Like substantial. 7 times more costly to use net wrap than it is twine. Like I mentioned, we bought this baler because that's what our customers want. Now, I'm not paying the net wrap difference, my customers are. And that's just how it is because I'm not going to cut into all my maintenance fees and everything else when realistically they could get twine bales or they get net wrap. I give them the choice if they want it, and they know that I already tell them too that the cost is higher if they do net wrap versus twine. 9 times out of 10 they're going to take it because they're storing their bales outside and they do store better. Not only that, but if you're transporting them from our farm to, let's say their farm's 20 miles away, you know, it's much easier to transport. You lose less product. It's just a better way to wrap a bale in general. I'm going to tell you how to calculate your cost of it real quick. So these rolls are 7,000 feet long. We do 3.5 wraps for our 5x5 bales. Now those 5x5 bales, they're 5 foot tall, right? 5 foot wide. So all we really care about right now is the 5 foot tall part because the width is covered on here. So all we need to know is linear length, which is the 7,000. And we also need to know how many wraps we're doing and how many linear feet that takes to wrap it. 5 foot bale, to find the circumference of it, you're going to take 2 times pi, which is 3.14, times 2.5. That's the radius of the bale. Now, if you were doing a 4 foot bale, well, like a 4 foot tall bale, same thing, but instead of doing 2.5 for your radius, you do 2. Radius is just half the diameter of your bale. You do that, right? Whatever number you get, in our case, we're going to multiply it by 3.5. That is going to give us 54.95 feet. Now, we round that up to 60 feet for a few reasons. One is the simple fact that I don't know how accurate this thing is as far as like if it knows exactly what 3.5 wraps is, or if it's really 3.7 wraps, but it says it's 3.5. I don't know. I really don't. And I'd rather be cautious and have extra on hand rather than not enough. Once we do all that though, so we got our 54.5 or 54.95 feet. We round up to 60 is what we're going to do to account for the potential inaccuracies. And also, if we had a bale that we had to rewrap for whatever reason because, you know, a malfunction happened and this got caught. Didn't happen last roll, and it actually didn't happen this roll either, but it may happen, so I account for it. You don't have to. But 7,000 feet divided by the 60 feet that we use per bale is going to give us 116.6 bales that one 7,000 foot roll of net wrap should cover. When you take that, right, so you divide whatever the cost of that net wrap is, you divide it by the number of bales that you can cover with that net wrap. That's going to give you your cost per bale. So that's what you see in the top right of that Excel spreadsheet where it says net wrap and then it says twine. So like in ours, it says $2.21 per net for net wrap per bale. That's all important because you can't, I don't have a formula in there for that. You're going to have to do that one by hand. And the reason being is because net wrap comes in multiple different lengths. It comes in 7,000, 8,500, 9,000, 10,000, 12,000. There's a bunch of different lengths that it can be in. And so I can't make it to where that formula covers all of it. So you will have to do a little bit of math on your own there. Now, once you do that math though, and you fill that in the very bottom of that sheet, it's going to fill out some other stuff. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute as well. Now we got to do the same thing for our twine setup. Now we use twine for our farm because it's better for us and it's cheaper. Our bales are stored inside, so I'm not as worried about the weather. Plus, it makes it much simpler for me to get the twine off than it is net wrap for the hay racks that we have made. But to figure this out, right, each of these rolls holds 20,000 feet of twine. Now we have a dual twine setup, so you'll see that it's got two rolls being fed down to that twine arm that has a split in it so that there's two twine arms down there feeding it. To put this simply, we're going to break it down real easy. We're just going to say that it takes 10 wraps per twine arm, so 20 wraps per bale of twine. Now, again, to make the math simple, let's just say that each wrap is 10 feet. So that's 200 foot of twine per bale for twine. What we're going to do now is we're going to take that 200, we're going to divide it by the 20,000 feet that our twine comes in. Obviously, the math is real simple. It's good for 100 bales. Now, that's not precise to this, but that's just a way to figure it out. So if let's say you get 100 bales out of this, and let's say it costs, we'll just say, again, for easy math, we'll just say that this costs $50. So you take the $50 of your roll of twine, you're going to divide it by however many bales you cover. So if $50 covers 100 bales, then it cost me 50 cents per bale for twine. Now the actual math for it on mine is 37 cents a bale. So it is substantially cheaper to use twine versus net wrap. And honestly, again, that's another reason we use it, but it comes down to ease of use. If it was easier for us to get the net wrap off in our hay feeders, we would actually use net wrap. So it's going to be a convenience thing versus cost most of the time. So when you go onto your Excel spreadsheet, right, you're going to see all the stuff where it talks about the equipment and their cost per acre. Right below there, you're going to see cost per acre. So the cost per acre, not including net wrap or twine, that cost is going to be $112.85 per acre that we cover. Then, if you were going to net wrap it, for instance, you can see in that column just to the right of it, it's $115.06. And then if you were to use twine instead, that's $113.22. But notice it showed, because we've broken this down by acre, that cost is going to change dramatically by how many bales per acre you get. And that's why I was saying that the cost to make hay is subjective to an extent. Because if every time that we talk about making hay, we just automatically said, yep, I make 3 bales an acre. Well, if you get a drought year, you didn't make 3 bales an acre. Or if you, let's say you skimped a little bit on fertilizer, you didn't get 3 bales an acre, you might have got less. All these different things play a huge part in it. That's why I break it down cost per acre, not cost per bale right off the bat. That way I know going in, hey, this is how much it's going to cost me. If this thing makes 2 bales an acre, it's okay, right? If I'm coming away with 2 bales an acre. If it only makes 1 bale an acre, I'm hurting because nobody's going to buy a bale of hay for $100 and some odd unless it's a severe drought and they can't get hay anywhere else. It's a difficult relationship to manage, right? You spend too much money on fertilizer and then you don't get the rain. Now you're still upside down. You don't spend the money on fertilizer, you get lots of rain, you're upside down again. There's a lot of difficulties to it. The equipment cost, everything. But keep going down that list, and I will say that on average, so far, for the last 2 years, we have averaged 3 bales an acre across the whole farm. Now, some fields obviously performed a little better, some fields performed a little worse, but the average across all of our acreage has been just over 3 bales an acre. So if I was net wrapping all those bales, That's what we're going to go with for now. You can look down on this chart, and like I said, cost per acre goes down the more bales we get because it's dividing it across multiple bales that are going to be sold or used. So 3 bales an acre for net wrap is $44.25. $3 or 3 bales per acre, sorry. For twine is $38.73. You can keep reading to figure out the differences between where you're at, because if you're in, let's say, North Missouri, where the ground is much more fertile and you're getting way more bales per acre, your costs are going to be very different from mine. That's not the full cost, though, of making hay, because depending on the ground, so like if it's ground that we own, we're responsible for fertilizing it, we're spraying it, all these other things. Now, if you're doing a really good job of keeping up with everything, you shouldn't have to spray. Once you get everything eradicated, you might have to spray once every, say, 3 to 5 years. But we're just going to talk about the acreage that we're haying, and we're just going to talk about the fertilizer that we're using. Our farm, we use different variations of fertilizer. Some of the fertilizer we use is manure from the sheep because they're in the barn. So everything that is taken off of our hayfield goes back on our hayfield. We don't sell any of that hay because we want it all to go back on there. And the reason for that is because I want all that nutrients to be put back onto the field it came off of. Plus, I want the manure to go with it and the sawdust because it's going to add some to it. So when you go down here again and you look across this Excel spreadsheet, at the very bottom, you're going to see fertilizer costs highlighted in yellow. Just below that, you're going to see fertilizer type and cost per ton. So we've got triple 19 at $661 a ton because that's what it was this spring. And I've got it broken down based off of how many pounds per acre you're putting on. So amount per acre, acres covered, cost per acre. That's different fields that we use here at our farm and different fields that we cut off of and the different variations we use for fertilizer to extent. If you look all the way to the right, though, you'll see that we don't have triple 19 on that column. We have manure. And that manure we put down 8,000 pounds an acre. That's including that's not right. For the manure one, it should actually say 4,000 pounds an acre. That was a typo. I will fix that. Now, if you look at the manure column, you'll see that we've got manure, and that's the manure we're talking about that comes from our sheep with the sawdust mixed in and obviously the hay residue that's wasted. All that gets scooped up, taken right back to our hay field. That is a 22-acre field. Well, it's 21.7, but I rounded up to make the math easier. And we put 4,000 pounds or 2 tons per acre. Now, there's no cost to that other than the little bit of fuel I use to spread it. Everything else is already there, right? I literally use fuel to run this tractor to spread it. And obviously there's a little bit of maintenance going on with the manure spreader we have and the tractor, of course, too. But overall, you know, nothing's free, I guess you could say, but in the grand scheme of things, that manure is free. So when I use that manure at 2 tons an acre and I use net wrap, that makes my cost at 1 bale an acre, $115.06, 2 bales, $60.84, 3 bales, $44.25, so on and so forth. You can read through these and figure it out where you're at. Now, you can also punch in your cost. So let's say that it's, let's say that you change yours and it's not $661 a ton. Let's say it's $1,000 a ton, again, to make math easy. And let's say you're taking over a 10-acre field and you're going to spread, we'll just say you're spreading a ton an acre, right? So if you're spreading a ton an acre and it's $1,000 a ton, you know, that's $1,000 an acre. Or if you're spreading, let's say, 100 pounds an acre and you're covering a 20-acre field and it's $1,000 a ton, now you've changed your cost substantially. Now it's $50 an acre. All these different things are all calculated and all things that you can calculate off of this sheet. And I encourage you to do it to figure out where you're at. Is it cheaper for you to make hay? Is it cheaper for you to buy hay? Obviously, it's, again, subjective because a drought year, it might be really cheap to buy hay. Or sorry, on a good year like this year, it's really cheap to buy hay. You can buy hay right now for about anywhere from $30 to $50 a bale, depending on the size of the bale and the quality of the hay. Whereas last year, you couldn't touch a bale around here because it was such a drought and people were feeding hay in the late summer already. You couldn't touch a bale of hay for less than $100. And it may not even be good quality hay. It might just be a bale of something. You have to go through here. You have to calculate some things out. Now, the last thing I have to say about this is if you are a customer here, right, you buy hay from us, you're going to see these prices on this Excel spreadsheet and stuff and be like, hey, that's interesting. He's charging me less than what this shows. You're not getting a special discount. All of our customers pay the same. So I just want you to know that. What you don't realize here is that these are example numbers, right? We don't owe money on all of our equipment. We only owe money on very little of our equipment, actually only 2 pieces of our equipment. I'm not going to tell you which ones. I'm not going to tell you how much because that's personal information that realistically I'm not going to disclose. I'm just going to be honest with you. However, like I said, you're going to notice that your prices are different than this, so don't think that you're a special customer to us. We appreciate everybody that buys from us, but I don't want anybody thinking that, well, I get a discount and he probably don't give that to everybody else. It's the same price across the board for everybody. So I don't want anybody spreading rumors like that or thinking anything like that is going on. Nobody's getting played favorites. It's just how it is. These numbers were used for examples to help others that are trying to figure out if it's worth it to them to make hay or if it's better to use custom harvest hay like we do with people, or if it's better for them to just buy hay outright and not hay their land at all. A lot of variables go into it. I wish I could make everything a precise answer, but a lot of this is subjective based off of weather, fertilizer usage, just a lot of different things, and it's hard to pinpoint all of it. One last key point about this spreadsheet though, anything that's in yellow, right? So anything that's in bright yellow, that can be changed and it needs to be changed in order to make your calculations accurate. The reason I say that is because, for instance, what's in, let's go to cost per acre for 1919 at 350 pounds an acre. That cost is only accurate if you really paid $661 a ton. If you didn't, you need to figure out your cost, divide up what you cost per acre, put it on there, and then it's going to add it in there, and it's going to divide it amongst the different columns here, and it's going to divide it all out regularly, whether you do 1 bale, 2 bales, 3 bales, etc. You'll see that when you change those numbers, those costs per bale change in that column. If you have any questions about it, please reach out to us on Facebook, Messenger. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. You can also email me at travis@freedomfarmsmo.com. Gonna be honest, I don't check that email as much as I should, and I do apologize for that. Try to check it once a week, but I'm still a busy man, and I'm trying to do my best here. So if you need this Excel spreadsheet, though, please reach out to us on Facebook, and we will gladly send it to you through Messenger or through email. And when I check my email, I'll respond and send it to you. Thanks for watching. Look, stop talking about each other. If you got something to say about somebody else, talk to God about them. Pray for each other instead of talking about each other. And for the love of God, pray for this nation. Doesn't matter who's in charge. We always need to pray for our nation. So thanks for watching. Have a blessed week. See you next time.